Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sean. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. The disaster of China's zero COVID policy has many contributors, the primary being the Communist Party's need for political control. One of the byproducts of that control is Beijing's vaccine nationalism and President Xi Jinping's decision not to offer China's 1.4 billion citizens access to Western-made mRNA COVID vaccines. Months into the pandemic, as vaccine manufacturers around the world begin their race to develop the shots, countries including Canada and the US signed contracts with multiple vaccine suppliers. The fastest and best would be deployed. But China let communist nationalism drive its procurement decisions and rejected foreign vaccines. That decision is still haunting the Chinese people. China's homegrown vaccines, Sinovac and Sinopharm, are much less effective against COVID than our mRNA shots created by Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna. Sinovac was much less effective initially against symptomatic COVID, only about 50%. mRNA vaccine's efficacy rate is more than 90%. The comparison is even worse against serious diseases, especially for the most vulnerable. A Brazil BMJ study of those over age 70 found that Sinovac was only 61% protective against death and 55% against hospitalization. That compares to upward of 90% protection against hospitalization for Moderna and Pfizer for seniors. Another study in the Lancet found that Sinovac produces a much inferior memory T-cell response than neutralizing antibodies against Omicron variant. The memory T-cell response is what protects people against severe illness as variants evolve. Tens of millions of China's elderly still aren't vaccinated, perhaps because the word has spread that its vaccines are less effective. Some countries also refused to recognize Sinovac as an accepted vaccine and have suggested that those who received the Chinese shot consider getting an mRNA booster. Beijing launched its own counter-offensive with propaganda casting doubt on the safety of the Pfizer shots. In January 2021, as Chinese vaccines were distributed to other countries, the Communist Party mouthpiece Global Times ran news stories and editorials suggesting that Western vaccines were killing people. In Hong Kong, when both Sinovac and Western vaccines were available, the choice between shots was influenced by whisper campaigns in the Chinese community that the Western shots were less safe. In March 2021, China announced that the Chinese border would be open to foreigners who received the Sinovac shots, but not for those getting the Western jab. Because the superiority of China's political system is central to Xi's nationalism, China's leaders must have felt they couldn't accept Western vaccines. They can't concede that China still trails the West in some areas, especially in pharmacy areas. In the early stage of vaccine rollout during the pandemic, China made a great play about its own production efforts. Last year, it claimed to have made half of the world's existing stock of COVID vaccines. So, it is not surprising that Beijing has been reluctant to use vaccines developed elsewhere. Beijing may also have felt it could steal the mRNA technology. When Moderna sought to sell its vaccine in China, Beijing demanded it hand over its intellectual property. Moderna wisely declined. There was high hope that zero COVID would end after Communist Party Congress and the release of a Chinese-made mRNA vaccine. In June, Hong Kong's South China Morning Post reported that China's AW Corona mRNA vaccine provided a 4 times stronger immune response than traditional vaccines. But the vaccine still hasn't arrived, though it has been approved in Indonesia. Could China be using that country as a testing ground in case there are safety problems? Who knows? After protests broke out, health officials said that China would be ramping up vaccine rollout for elderly people. But it stopped short of announcing mandates that helped raise inoculation rates in other countries. While cash incentives and insurance for vaccine accidents have been offered by local officials to dispel hesitancy, the central government has forbidden the use of mandates. The low vaccination rate in China, namely among old people, is a major driving force behind the strict COVID policies. Many older people living in China have not gotten vaccinated out of fear of side effects. They also saw no reason to get the vaccine in a country that reports virtually no COVID deaths. According to the government, 90% of the population has been vaccinated with 2 doses of Chinese vaccines, including Sinopharm and CoronaVac. A much lower percentage of the population had a booster shot. 56% of the overall population, 68% of elderly aged 60 or above, and just 40% of those 80 or older. According to a statement from the National Health Commission, officials vowed to push shots harder in places like nursing centers and make those unwilling to get inoculated provide a reason for their refusal. The government will also use big data to identify elderly people who need the vaccine, the statement said. China is still persisting with zero COVID while most of the rest of the world has moved on to restore normalcy. Years of propaganda demonizing Western countries for their lax attitude toward the virus has caused the deep-rooted fear of COVID-19 in China. And the Communist Party's wariness to suddenly reverse that stance is also delaying the country's reopening. As I said, it is political. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.